think I really understood that I was an American. I was just black.
The narrative given to those that were brought here slavery is different from the narrative that those that stayed in Africa have.
My own point of reference that I saw about Africa or Africans were these commercials of Ethiopian children that were sick and with pot bellies. And
how many kids do you know that are coming from our tribe in this country that has been for petty crimes?
When y'all got free, how come you didn't go back to Africa?
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Emo Talk Show. My name is Talia, and I'm so glad that you have opened up this link and willing to watch us today. Emo Talk Show is a platform where we discuss all social issues impacting the African diaspora. If this is your first time here, please go ahead and click the subscribe button so that you can come back and you can become part of the family, because that's what really matters. Make the algorithm work for this work. On the episode today, I have some wonderful people here, and one of my mentors is here. He's been on this platform before, but you're gonna see him again, so I'm gonna have him reintroduce himself, and then I'm gonna have my other guest introduce herself because it is her first time here. And then I'll come back and tell you guys what we'll be talking about.
So I'm Brandy Miller, and I work at Drake University. I work in financial aid, and that's my regular profession. I also have a nonprofit called Black Women for Healthy Living, and we are a Christ-centered wellness movement for Black women addressing health disparities. And I like to be involved in my community, so.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Yes, I'm Philippe. In short, you can call me Phil. I'm a pastor, and that's what I do for a living. I've been involved with many things in education and accreditation, in missions, and so on and so forth. And I have a non-profit organization called the Ezra Nehemiah, which draws from the biblical view of how the children of Israel were in the diaspora and how they lived. So I'm glad to be here, to be able to talk on Emo Talk.
And into that, yes. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate your willingness to come and talk to the people and talk to me, because I love learning from both of you. And so I'm just really happy to be having this conversation. On today's episode, we'll be talking about the divide between African Americans and Africans. This is a topic that is dear to my heart, and I really wanted to bring it here more specifically because this summer I got to sit at a table of elders from my community and heard some things that they had to say about the African American population. And it really broke my heart because I knew that it was coming from a place of ignorance. And so this is why I'm doing this episode. And I've been wanting to do this for a really long time, but I wanted a larger panel. I wanted older and younger people, but I figured I could start this conversation with just two people and broaden it. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. We are just going to be dispelling some myths that are on both ends of the conversation. And so starting right off, what do you feel like are the historical factors that contribute to the divide that we see in the Black diaspora today? You know, I think that I've seen some videos where people say, oh, Caribbeans love their Africans, or like Africans love their Caribbeans, but they'd rather not do it with African Americans. And so like, what has influenced that?
And I think I'm just going to provide some context for like how I view it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. And so just as a native, like Black American, I didn't realize the challenges. I originally didn't connect with Africa in any way. So like growing up, my only point of reference that I saw about Africa or Africans were these commercials of Ethiopian children that were sick and with pot bellies and HIV. And so for me growing up, there was nothing like attractive about that. That was hard for me to see. They were sick. And then also living in a predominantly white space, there wasn't a lot of talk about even African Americans and our contributions to this country.
Right.
So then there's a sense of what's beautiful and what's not beautiful and who's beautiful and who's not. And so like just growing up as a little Black girl, there was a lack of identity for just me as a Black American.
Right.
I don't even think I really understood that I was an American.
Right.
I was just Black. It wasn't until like as an adult and I went to London, they called me an American. She's American. Like I've been in my country and I'm Black over there. But this is an American thing. So just a lack of identity that I see. And so to start thinking about Caribbean and different people of color, Black people from different places, like I'm trying to figure out who I am as a Black American. And I think the older that I'm getting more of a sense of identity. But primarily that has come from my identity in Christ as a Christian. That's helped put some perspective around identity. I would read the Bible and I see a people and I see a culture and I see a language and I see all these things, but I don't have that. It was missing. And so then I know now I've come from Africa in some way. And there's this complex history that I didn't know how to navigate, you know. So when you start seeing differences, Black people, Black Americans have issues with each other. Right. So then you add another layer to it and you bring in African people into it and we don't speak the same language. I mean, I didn't even realize it was a continent. And that there's a whole bunch of countries. I didn't even understand even the lay of the land because they're not teaching me about me. So they're definitely not teaching me about
where you come from.
Where I came from. There's just a whole lot. And I don't want to take up most of the time just sharing, but I just want you to know where my point of reference of African and like people immigrating and coming into schools. When I was in schools in the 80s, it was more like Laos, from Asian cultures. I didn't have a lot of Africans coming in during the time I was in school.
Right.
I see more so now, like in my children's generation, and how they're navigating that, I don't know. But then the Asian community wasn't closely aligned with skin tone for me. So it was just like another student in the class and they spoke a different language. So anyway.
I'm going to touch on what you said about identity, right? When I first came to the States and I got called Black for the first time, I remember asking my teacher, I was like I looked at my skin. Because this is not something they tell us before we come here. Because where we come from, you are identified by your culture background, like what tribe you are, what country you come from, what faith you have, and things like that, what clan. So like, being identified as a Black person for the first time, I was 11 years old. I looked at my skin. I kept looking at myself. Like the teacher was so puzzled because she was like, why is she not, like it was a form I was filling out and like they had nothing else. Like, it was Black. And I said, what do these each mean? And she said, well, you're Black. And I looked at my skin and I said, I'm Black? I think I was Black. I'm Congolese. I'm African. Like, that's who I am. I'm a Bembe tribeswoman. And the lady just looked, she didn't know how to, like, navigate that conversation. And so she never said anything else. I went home confused, and I think for that whole year, I was confused about who I was. Because someone called me something I wasn't. Or, I accept it now, but, like... Where I come from, I would have never accepted being called that. You know, we don't call people by their race. Wazungu are Wazungu, like they're people from far. That's how we identify white people. Like, we don't call them white. We call them people from the foreign land. That's the definition of Wazungu. I just thought when you talked about your identity, definitely had some similar experience here. But go ahead, Pastor. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the divide, the difference, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
That has contributed to the divide. I think if we go historically, it is this whole issue of the Black continent. It's known as Africa. That's how it has been referred to. Actually, some dictionaries go back and tell you that the word Africa comes from Afaraga or something like that, which is black. Now we're coming to discover that it's not even the meaning. So that's a different thing altogether. So we cannot go into semantic and etymology and so on to find the origin of words. But what I consider that everyone who is found around the world who has a brown skin, I think he's originally somehow from Africa. That's the beginning of it. We understand the whole divide that has been historically, politically, socially, economically, driving all this issue. It has been the issues of the control of wealth, the issues of control of
narrative,
determination of your supremacy over the other people and so on. And I think the challenges we face as a divided people, if I can use that term, it comes from that historical background, come from that political background. Because the divide of the Black, yes, as tribes from Africa, like you just mentioned, we had our own divide, tribal divide. That's where the concept of tribalism comes from. We have the issues of ethnicity, where the ethnic groups were divided or clans were divided and so on and so forth. But the divide as it is seen today, I think it's much more a resultant not of the tribal divide, not the clans divide, because Africans had ways to live together from different tribes. We had bonds and relationship and parental relationship. There are tribes that I can never offend, and they can never offend my tribe because we have a certain bond that we believe. We call each other people we can joke with, people we can laugh with. If I have a funeral, they have to bring things to support me and to help me and things like that. And so when people look at Africa from afar, they can use the concept of tribes and clans as if there was a real divide. But in reality, Africa had a way to blend with each other, even with different tribes. The division comes with history. The division comes when we start being exposed to the Western world with those who call themselves explorers. And I heard the word in French, those who came to discover, as if we never existed yet before. So those who came to discover, when they came to Africa, they came with a certain mindset. And when they saw the tribes, they started bringing in the sense of dividing to conquer. So our divide today, our differences, as we feel it today, that we cannot bond together or connect together, comes from that mentality, that philosophy of divide to conquer. And that has been a politics that has been used in Africa to divide different nations, to divide different tribes, to divide different people from different regions and so on and so forth. So that's basically the origin of it. So if you come and build on that, the problem of slavery that happened, that people were taken from Africa on this side, the narrative given to those that were brought here slavery is different from the narrative that those that stayed in Africa have. So those that were brought here in America 4 centuries ago were told, your brothers, your sisters sold you because they hated you. And you are to go to America to be sold as slaves. And that narrative was developed here. But in Africa, the same people who took the slaves, same people colonized and controlled Africa. the same people undermine Africans. To the point, if I was a king and I was exposed to the Westerners, they would force me to sell slaves. Because slaves were the industry, slaves were the power that would work in plantations in different places. So I had to sell. If I'm a king and I say, starting today, I'm no longer selling any slave, then the problems start. They will use my cousin or my brother or my uncle or my aunt against me, remove me from being the king, and take another person who will do what they want to do. So you see, those are the divide that we call. And when they say they sold you, the truth is they never sold them because they wanted to sell them. Because if they wanted to sell them, that would have started, the selling in the African context of slaves would have started at that time. But in the African context, slaves had a process of going from slavery where you work for someone and you become a free person. And all those were inbuilt within the African culture. So people are not slave eternally. People are not slave because of their tools that will be used to produce money for someone. People are slaves because of certain things that were happening culturally that made them to be in a lesser position because these ones were in the ruling position and so on and so forth, but not to undermine. And so the history of the divide, from me, when I look at it, as we see it today, comes from that background. The background where what you were told as African Americans, what we are told as African, is completely different thing. And makes me to be opposed to you. But the same person who took you as slave and impoverished me, exploited Africa, colonized Africa, and maintained Africa where it is today, till today.
Left the colonial mentality.
Left the colonial mentality in the mind of the people. To the point, even when we come here, we didn't come here because we just want to come. We came here because there was war and everything. And if you start looking deeper under that war, you ask yourself the question, who's orchestrating the war?
Right. So like,
and that's the challenge that we have.
I think that like, oh my gosh, that does so much. The context that I just said is great. And I would like to then talk about like, I want to ask you, you know how like kids go to school? You said in your generation, like when you went to school, that there weren't colored kids at your school that were Africans per se.
Not
so
African.
You didn't have that. You didn't have that encounter in high school. But like now, I came here as a middle schooler, and I went to school. And personally, my experience with African Americans, and this is an experience that we can say is general for a lot of African kids, right? When we first come, a lot of African parents tell their kids, like, I don't want you to befriend the African Americans.
Oh.
Like, this is something, like, if I'm lying, please go ahead and comment. Like, I know I'm not lying. A lot of parents will tell their kids, like, don't befriend African Americans. My mom never specifically told me that, but, like, every encounter I ever had with an African American was negative. So when I moved to Iowa, I was like, I'm not even gonna try. Like, I was in high school when I moved here, and I said, I'm not even gonna try. But like Pastor said, that historical context lets us know that because there is this narrative that has been sold to both groups. Back home, they see on TV, all they see is the narrative that like African Americans live in the ghettos. They shoot at each other. They are criminals. They are drug addicts. They sell drugs. Like all
they're
these
not stable in their
they're
marriage
not
and
stable.
so on and so on.
Like all these negative things, right? And in the same way, African Americans had this, like I had this conversation in college, and one of the African American panelists said that the reason why they were mean to African kids in school is because how dare African kids come here and feel so comfortable and act so barbaric. Like that's the word that she used, because that is the word that has been used in the past to describe Africans and our cultures and our religions and our beliefs, right? So she said, how dare they come and be so loud and do all these things and feel like they can run the school? So yes, I bullied kids in school. She said that. When I came as a middle schooler, the first encounters of my bullying attempts happened through African Americans, females specifically. Like I never had issues with the males. It was always a girl that I felt like they could like bully me. That I even remember like we had a bus driver that would bully all of us. And I was like, you're an adult. You know, so I think like that goes to say like what the narrative that we've both been sold, how it has divided us further than we could have been, right?
We have to point one thing. But talking about this narrative, I'm not trying to say that the Africans are perfect.
No.
No. I'm not trying to say that the Africans don't have conflict among each other. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say like the narrative today that is only the immigrant coming in Africa who are bringing the mess and the chaos in America and so on and so forth. Like it is today propagated even by those who do propaganda for elections. There are, in every people, there are some positive people, some good people, and some bad people. And generalizing is not a good thing.
No, it's not.
But the narrative we're talking about here is not a generalization. It is a historic fact. The historic fact is such as we were in Africa given the term of being barbaric, given the term of being backward, given the term being not developed. But when you start looking into history of civilizations, which actually I question if Europe is a civilization, because what they brought around the world, everywhere they went, is barbarism.
Amen to that. I wanted to
It
say that.
is killing and dominating and oppressing and enslaving
And
and
that's
colonizing
what barbaric people do.
and neo-colonizing and so on. Non-African nation has done that to each other or from outside. And if today we hear about conflict that are happening in Africa and so on and so forth, if you go deeper and start looking at them, you come to find that it's being remote controlled from the Western side.
Wow.
So it is the same mentality, same mindset that went from Europe and spread here in America to destroy all the Native Americans and take over their land. To go to Africa and take over the land in Africa and take over people and sell them as slaves in the Caribbean, in America. Go to Australia and take the Aborigine people and enslave them and destroy thousands and millions of people to become the majority country and the majority people. So this is what we are talking about.
Yeah.
And if we look at these,
That
who's
is
barbaric?
the definition of barbaric.
Who's barbaric? So that's the point.
Yeah.
And I'm not here trying to, and I know that if people follow this on YouTube and they will say, oh man, this man is trying to hit us. If we have to be objective in looking at things and call them as they are, because we want to move on, we want to understand where we come from, I think it is important. We call a spade, and we call things the way they are. So basically, I'm not saying the Africans are the angels. They are the clean people. No. They still have their wrongs, like any other people have their wrong.
No.
But we never made a systemic act of barbarism to other nations or to other races. We never did that.
Yeah.
And there is only one race that has done that all over the world, and we can document it in every country that exists in the world and in every continent. And that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like that. Go ahead.
I would like to respond to a couple of things, actually.
Yeah.
So first of all, like, I never really associated myself coming from Africa before, right?
Yes.
And then when I heard about slaves came from Africa, I had never originally heard that Africans sold us. We were kidnapped. That's what I heard. Okay. And not till more recently have I read books that has proceeded to say that there was some of both, that we were kidnapped and then we were sold by our own. So that kind of like, okay, kind of messed with me a little bit, but that's not made me treat African people a certain way. Yeah. I didn't see African people as they betrayed me. I wasn't even connecting myself with the land or the people. Slavery, as far as different African people coming from different places in Africa are being put in a situation where they don't speak the language, they're being brutally abused and forced to do a lot of things and being sold, and there's a whole lack of community. It grieves me. I'm feeling a whole lot of things right now as we're just having this conversation, because one of the things I feel like as an African American, I have lost a lot. And I think we have done a pretty good job of creating our own kind of culture.
Yes.
Despite being given tools. Yeah. Every time we try to come together, they do something to divide, stripping our males and our men to the place where they can just take the women and do what they want. You don't get to be a man. You don't get to be a husband. You don't get to be a father. You can't build a family. You can't build a community. So when you see Black Americans, in ghettos and shooting each other and doing a lot of things, there's a whole lot of things that help set that up. When you don't provide a sense of family, a sense of identity, a sense of culture, and you label us Black, and you advise us less than, and there's just so many obstacles.
I feel like that's what has African people, we are missing the context of I know because I do a lot of research and I read a lot, and I'm interested as to what happened to our ancestors that came to the other side, right? I'd like you to speak on it. I'd like you to maybe touch on the war on drug. I'd like you to touch on incarceration, because those are challenges that African Americans have faced that has been embedded systemically to keep them in a place where they can't really get out. And so a lot of our people don't know that.
And to add to that,
right?
In the context of our dialogue today, how do we bridge the divide?
Right.
That has been sold to us.
Right.
Yeah. That's the picture we see. That's the picture we see. Yeah. When you come from Africa, you're being told, don't go there. They're drug dealers. They kill each other. They are good for nothing. So we develop a certain stereotype.
Yeah.
And I'm now talking here about what we as people of color do among each other, because it's not just a matter of pointing finger at the Westerners did this to us, but what do we do to each other?
Yeah.
You see, and that's the background. I think.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting because we're kind of seeing some of the same things happening with some of the African youth here.
Yes.
Getting caught up in some of the
drugs and
the gang violence, the drugs and just a whole lot of things. So it's kind of like that's probably a whole study.
It is.
Of how Black skin, because I think that's the only thing you can call it is Black skin, and how that's how it's affecting this whole narrative. It's not the culture per se or our individual identities. It's a skin thing. Yes. That's the only thing I can see it as. Because as an American, I only speak English. I don't have a direct connection with Africa. So I feel like you were able to speak where you're from and what tribe and
all of it.
I mean, there's just a sense of pride and identity of who you are. And it's I don't have that. I was like, whoa, that's beautiful. But what we have is skin tone, right? But that's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're completely different cultures.
Yes.
And I think bringing us together and saying, because we have same skin color, then that means we must be the same. So what makes a person the same? Right. Is it their language? Is it their skin? Is it their religion? Or, do you know what I'm saying? But I think because the way the Western world, where we live, the America, they they see it all about skin.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not about language. Well, they don't like language either. I mean, anything different.
They don't like.
They don't like. You know, so where does it all begin? So, I mean, you bring people over here that don't speak the language, that are being oppressed, brutalized, and then they're trying to, create community. They're trying to create family. They're trying to communicate with one another. And then they might like each other, and I love her, he love me. Okay, we have a baby. I'm like, no, you can't be having that. So you can't even get married.
Mm-hmm.
They had this whole jumping of the broom to signify they were legally married, but you don't have rights. You don't have a right to a wife or a family. And then they'll just sell you off. And then your people are somewhere over here. It's scattered over here. And so you talk about trauma. You talk about mental health. Like, I feel like we're extremely resilient people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for us to not survive, but we lived through slavery. The mere fact that I'm sitting here today is a proof and a testament to what we've lived through. And be able to have something, because nothing was given to us. Nothing. Not health insurance, not therapy after 400 years.
Yes.
And then when we were like legally emancipated or whatever, now we're free, it took 3 years before everybody realized it. And they had to have the federal government troops actually go tell this group of people that you're free. So then they started working aggressively to continue to enslave us.
And even then, some people couldn't leave their plantation because where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go? Right.
They have no rights to get a house.
Nope.
They have no money. They literally have nothing.
Nothing.
So how do you tell somebody like that, well, you're free, go ahead, have a life.
Go build
Where am I going to build at?
Mm-hmm.
Like back home in Africa, you can go to a place and like build somewhere and you could live there for a long time, even if you don't own the land per se. But like here, you can't do that.
No, they started legislating laws and rules and everything to create opposition for us to have anything. And then when we would get something, there was a small season in time after was 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation, that we had this golden season. You know, we've got a president said, let's make America great again. And I'm like, for who and when? You know what I'm saying? Did that happen, right? And so I was like, oh, maybe that sweet season where we actually got to run for office and be at the table, and we actually got to build wealth. And they stripped that away so fast. And it's never been like that since. Yeah. So whether it's Jim Crow, whether it's who can vote, whether it's creating tests that you have to take, but, you know, separate but equal. I mean, all of these things, it's like, it was separate. It was not equal. Our schools are different. Our hospitals are different. We get the least books. We get the worst of everything. But yet we're supposed to live like this parallel life. Yeah. And it doesn't exist.
And that was less than a century ago.
Absolutely.
I think, like, some people, I've had people, like, every time I do an episode, I try to, like, get people's reactions online and stuff. And I had somebody tell me, well, African American are cowards because they've had 400 years to come off that.
Oh, my goodness.
They've had 400 years to come off that. And they're still blaming it on slavery. And they're still saying that, like, slavery caused this. But they've had 100 years to like reclaim themselves.
Yeah, it just doesn't. it just
to reclaim themselves. But to that, right? I say that like when you're put in a position where you can't even decide what happens to your own family
or your own body,
like how can you tell me that I'm in control of that? Like how can you blame me? You know, racism is a fight that Black people in this country have had to face and are still facing. And now that we as Africans are coming over here, we are having to deal with it. And I swear, let me tell you this, Brandy, African people don't know how to handle it. They don't, at times, they don't even see it. Right? They don't even see it. They don't see it when it happens. So when I was having that conversation this June with those elders. And they told me like, well, these African Americans, they're so mean to us. When we come here, like they should be our brothers. They should tell us the ropes. They should tell us like how things run here and whatnot. But they don't offer their support. They don't offer their help. And I said, well, would you say that you are approachable to an African American?
Mm.
And they're like, well, no, they're gangsters. Like, literally, that's how they put it. They said they're gangsters. How can I like be approachable to them? And I said, well, in as much as you may think that the two groups are different, in this country, we're really not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because the man in charge
Yeah.
doesn't see any differences between the two.
Right.
So then I was asking them, right? Like incarceration has been like, I would say like, it is what was planted to bring dysfunctionality to the Black family dynamic in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember like asking those elders, I said, how many kids do you know that are coming from our tribe, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this country that has been to jail and for petty crimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they said and thought about it for a minute. And they came back, they said, this person's kid, they just came out of jail. This person's kid
Mm-hmm.
was there last year. This person's kid. They went on and named so many names.
Mm.
And I said, in 10 years, what do you think is going to happen to us?
Mm-hmm.
In 20 years? People online like to claim that like, if we go and have all of these degrees, that we can better ourselves, that we can fight off racism.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see the numbers? Like the data that comes out of the number of Black women
That have
that
degrees?
have PhDs, not just degrees, PhDs.
Yes. Yes.
What difference has that made?
Right.
You know? So
I think we're falling in the same trap.
yeah.
When someone comes to dominate you
Mm-hmm.
and they tell you, now we give you the freedom, the independence, the liberty to do whatever you want. The truth is, do they really give you the liberty?
Right.
The truth is, they don't give you the liberty.
Yeah.
Actually, freedom is not given.
Yeah.
Freedom is taken.
Mm.
Freedom is claimed. And the biggest problem that as part of all this problem that we're saying is we've been alienated.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about all this issue of slavery, colonization, neo-colonization, and so on and so forth, even this new term that created globalization, there's nothing like globalization. It's a global for some people who can travel around the world and who can feel the world is their village.
Yeah.
That is not global for someone whose passport cannot even cross the next country. Within Africa, 54 countries, but I want to go to the neighboring country. I need to get a visa to go in that country. So we have been conditioned. Our mind has been conditioned. It's like this. If you take a chicken, you tie its leg, and this I saw in Africa. You tie the legs, you put it in a car because you're driving somewhere. You drive for 2 hours or 4 hours. You arrive there, you untie the chicken.
It will not move.
And you leave it down. It won't move.
It will not move.
It doesn't move. It stays there because in its mind, it's still
been
tied up.
conditioned to stay.
And that's the conditioning we have. And this conditioning, we pass it from one generation to another generation. One generation to another generation.
Yeah.
I wasn't born during colonization. I was
Right.
born 5 years after colonization of Africa. But I still reflect some behavior of a colonized person.
Yeah.
How did I get this?
Because it's taught. It's passed.
It's passed on.
It's passed on.
So these things are passed on. These things are not because I lived it. So when someone tells you that 400 years you should have broken away from these, but it's passed on, and the system,
the camera, let
and
them
the
know.
and the
Because
system,
it pisses me off very much.
and the system is still passing on. And it doesn't mean that those who oppress to you are not there. They are still there.
Right.
The system is still there. They're still
They're just
controlling.
finding different ways to do it.
They are still finding it. Believe you me, when an oppressor changes the decree of the oppression, read very well the new decree of your liberation. It underlines new rules of oppression that are going to come in the next era.
Right.
So when we went from slavery and slavery abolition, we morphed into colonization. When we were told, now you receive independence, it wasn't independence. Actually, in Africa, for example, in the Congo, where I come from, it was, you receive independence, but those who are coming to lead are not white. We no longer in Africa, but who are the people who became the new leader of Africa. In the Congo, we called them the bourgeois comprador.
Oh, they like the ones they would put over the slaves.
Yes, so
The black person that they would put over the slaves.
yes, so
Same system.
same system. That's what I'm telling you.
Different places.
So
Different places.
different places. So it was what? It's like the nigger of the field and the nigger of the house.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
the niggers of the house took over the countries.
Oh.
They became the president, the ministers, and so on. They passed them the leadership without the mindset of we being Africans who have claimed these things. They were given. They were never claimed it. If they had claimed it, they had fought for it and they claim it, they will be free because they know the terms of freedom.
There's so much to unpack. I'm going to recommend that you put in your chat or bottom part a couple of videos that would provide some history about like the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, was it the 15th Amendment? I mean, they kept working that one. I mean, trying to pull it back, even to the place where if you're on private property, you can beat us. If we're on, I mean, just the kinds of things, the lynchings, the things that was able to happen, even though there were laws in place that were supposed to protect us. And then you hear language like, let's put things back in the state's hands versus the federal government. Well, we can't trust the states,
right?
Because there's a whole bunch of southern states that wanted to keep us slaves, right? And then you got a bunch of people migrated from there to come up here to deal with a whole different situation and laws. So the other thing too, and something you said about this globalization. As a Black American, I often don't think about the world. I think a lot of Americans, we are so American focused that we don't think about these other places unless we get to visit them or tour them. And I think that supremacy thing is an American, like our culture, our the way that we do things is the dominance. And
connecting to that, the discussion we have.
How could I, as a Black American, even have hospitality? Because we don't even talk about hospitality.
Exactly.
Because that's not a Western thing.
Exactly. Let me tell you one thing. Okay. And I've said this so many times in many platforms. Who's American? I've asked you this question. I've asked this question. I'm sorry to say this.
No.
And I know this will be offensive for some people.
Who's
American? Let me tell you the truth. You're not American.
I'm not American?
No.
Okay. I can accept that. I mean,
let me explain why I'm saying this. You're not even American.
What am I?
Anybody else. And I'm sorry to say this. This might sound racist for some people, but it's not racist, it's the truth. Anybody else who's what, Caucasian?
Oh, those are Americans.
From Europe.
Yes.
Those are Americans.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the ones who don't have any other prefix or suffix added to their Americanity.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Anybody else has something added.
Yep.
Even those that own this land.
Native American.
Even those that come from Asia.
Asian American.
If you come from the Latino community.
Yep.
Hispanic American.
If you come from Africa.
African American.
And in the African American, there is another divide. You African American, we African immigrant. That's how they categorize us.
Yeah. I just say I'm Black though.
Exactly. And
honestly, I just go by Black, and I know that's. Just don't call me the N-word, okay? Because don't call me the N-word.
Yes.
But I consider myself, and we've been colored, we've been Negroes, we've been called a lot of different things. I have settled on Black, and I know that I'm not technically Black.
Yes.
I know that I'm brown.
Yes.
Why did Black people accept Black?
We don't get. Why do we accept
it wasn't accepting or not accepting.
You're so funny.
It's like you were born. It's like you were born in
I'm
Mubembe.
so reluctant on it. When I do applications, I'm always like,
what am I supposed
It's like you were born. It's like you were born in Mubembe. Do you have to accept
no,
or refuse it?
no.
You just found yourself where. So this is the challenge we're having. So in this background, how do we build a dialogue?
Yes.
In this divide, in this conditioning of our mind, of our way of thinking, of our way of relating with other people, the Americans are higher. The other people coming from the other people coming from outside, Africans like us, they're lesser. But it's a conditioning.
Yeah. I think it's going to be challenging, honestly, because it can be challenging because we're different cultures. And the thing that connects us is skin.
Yes.
And our oppression.
And our oppression. So hopefully, that's most important, I think, right now. It's the oppression. Hopefully that maybe there will be more people that maybe have a curiosity or want to support. Because we're battling something over here that we've always been battling. Mm-hmm. But to lean in and help someone else navigate, that's a level of hospitality that would be nice that we had.
Yes, but we don't have.
But we haven't been groomed that way.
Yes.
Like within ourselves. Have you ever read the book about how to make a slave?
No.
Oh yes.
Like there's a whole book about how we are programmed in this country.
Yeah. And
it's so deep. Like I still do certain things.
Even after reading that book.
It's all in slavery. It's still there.
15th to 20th generation.
Yes.
So you may have heard this before as a pastor. So it took God one day to get them out of Egypt. Mm-hmm. It took how many years to get Egypt out of them?
All their life.
It's going to be an ongoing thing, right? So even for us, I don't know how many times you can say we're set free or whatever. There's an internalization thing that's there. I mean, I've watched it where like my neighbor that, they come from Vietnam and their families, and they bring their families together. They all live in the same house. He gets his driver's license before my son gets his driver's license. They work together. My Latino neighbors, they work together. There's a sense of community and belonging, and they help each other. They're enjoying. And then with us, we have these divides. This is within just an African-American group. So therefore, this is what we're working on. And then now we never start thinking about bringing in. So I have had a heart to do this because I met Tulia. Am I saying this right?
Yes.
As I thought, I know as a Black mom raising Black sons, that these mamas are probably going to have some time here.
Yes.
That's just something that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And that just came in my heart. Right. I don't know how many other people might feel like they want to help with that.
Right.
But for me, I feel like that's a way that I can help assist a mama. I can't talk about daddies because I'm a woman. How can we help you all navigate this coming into the country and recognizing some of the challenges, but
that you're gonna face.
You're gonna face, but there's a language barrier too that we can't. Like, how am I gonna walk up to you and I only speak English? I don't even know where you're from. Like, I know you're Congolese now, but before that, I mean, Africa. Okay, how do I talk? I don't even know how to even start a conversation to let me help you. Well, you know what I mean? And you coming in thinking I'm gangsta. You know what I mean? Or I'm all these things, and maybe because you come from a culture,
and
you
the
have a
language barrier
so there's a
Yeah.
language barrier, I think, that keeps us aside. And then I didn't even know what y'all thought about us.
Yeah.
This is new, and I don't know that we're thinking a whole lot about Africans in that way, like the whole barbaric thing, like. I don't know. I guess I never. Yeah. That's a whole thinking that. I'm not seeing a group of people in that way. And I want to apologize on behalf of Black women and Black people for the bullying that you faced and were not treated right. That's from my heart.
Thank you.
So I think bullying is a whole nother issue that everybody deals with.
Yes.
And you came into middle school, which is hard. Middle school is hard
for anyone.
For anybody. So you come in, you look different, you speak a different language. You're just people that are hurt people. So Black girls are hurt.
Yeah.
We're hurt in ways that I know here in Iowa, like we deal with colorism was so bad when I was growing up. Like the darker skin you had, like you were not attractive. This would not be acceptable. I have locks now. I did everything to my hair before. Lighter skin, like even Black men didn't want Black women. There's a lot of mixed.
They still don't want Black women.
Well, not here for sure, right? So anyway, I had to deal with that even coming up. And so there's a whole, their babies are better looking than our babies. Oh my goodness, there's so much that, when you talk about bringing up wounds and trauma of things, but at the end of the day, people are people.
Yeah.
America, classifies us and groups us, but we're all just people with the nature of sometimes. Now, it does seem like one particular group is a little more barbaric than us. Okay, that's documented. That is documented. Okay, but we have a propensity to do harm to one another.
Yeah.
And I would like today, like at least I can only speak for me. Whatever I can do I don't speak your language.
Yeah.
I don't know how to help, but if there's something I can do to help, like having this conversation, hopefully that helps.
Yes.
I don't know any of my family members that think of African people anyway bad.
Yeah. I think it's important we have a dialogue. And I think one of the ways to being oppressed is to deny you the freedom of engaging with other people. I think just sitting here and getting to know you and communicate with you and talk with you and share things with you, my past, my history, and you share your own past, not even touching on issues that are dividing us, helps you to start appreciating the other person on the other side. And that takes away the stereotype.
Yeah.
Because we are all captive of that alienated stereotype. We're prisoners of a certain view.
Yeah.
I view you this way. But in honest truth, it's not true.
Yeah.
And this cannot be generalized. Not every African American, not every white is barbaric.
Right.
Not every Black is barbaric. Not every Asian is this. No, we cannot generalize.
Yeah.
But I think if we start a conversation,
Yes.
we engage with each other, I think start an appreciation of each other. We can see something on the other side. Are there things that in the context of America that I do not know?
Yeah.
Yes. Same way. If you come to Africa and you come in my context, there are certain things that you make serious mistakes. We received many missionaries. And when they came to Africa, they made a lot of mistakes. Alongside a lot of good things. And we will see what? The intention. What was the intention when they made a mistake? The intention was good. They wanted to do this, but they could not do it because they don't understand the culture.
Yeah.
I've served as a missionary in 36 or 54 countries of Africa. And in traveling around, I saw how Africa is diverse. And when I went in any given country and arrived there, my first approach is what? Observe. My first approach is listen. My first approach is ask a question. How do you do this? If I do it this way, does it offend you or it doesn't offend you? I was being invited to the USA to preach before I came to resettle here. And when I would come, and I'm on the pulpit, all the way from Africa. I've never preached in an American church. And I arrive here, all white. You go to preach. I need to be very careful the example I'm using. And most of the time, I use my example on me. Because then I'm not offending anybody. It's me. It's my own life. And then when I want to say something that touches my audience, I will say, do you do this? Or please forgive me if this can be offensive, but this is the way, the perception we have, and so on and so forth. But even when sometimes when you ask, you apologize that way, you still sin differently. So I think for me, this should be an open conversation.
Yeah.
We studied, we engage it.
Yeah.
And I believe as people are talking, we start diffusing the stereotype.
Yeah.
And we start liberating their hearts to feel there was no reason.
Yeah. Not at all.
There was no reason for me to be away from you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
She's just like my African sister.
Mm-hmm.
He's
I
like
like
my
that.
he's like my African brother.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're different. So we're the same.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And I think there are many African Americans resettling back to Africa. And when they go to Africa, of course, the first mindset is, I'm going to be among my own people with my own skin and so on and so forth. Then comes the issue of language barrier. They can't speak the language. And the perception of the people is conditioned already. These are Oyibo, like a good Nigerian would say. These are white people. These are people coming from the West, from America and so on.
Oh, they're calling us white people?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You are Oyibo. So.
That's ironic. I've been black all my life. I should be white if I go to Africa.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It brings that clash. What is the consequence? The consequence in some places like in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and so on, where in Senegal, where a large number of African Americans have been accepted. They're literally becoming another tribe
And
in the divided tribes of Africa.
They've been given land.
Yes.
Land?
Land to build on, citizenship and everything. Some of them on arrival.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, I have to share this. Okay, this happened in 2019. I went to go vote during the 1 cent tax. And I was having a conversation with a group of white women and I had this hat on that created the conversation that I was wearing. And I was explaining, I was trying to get Black women walking and active. And it just started this whole racial conversation. So they got really comfortable with me. And at some point they asked me, when y'all got free, how come you didn't go back to Africa? That's what was asked to me. When y'all got free, how come y'all didn't go back to Africa? And I was so caught off guard because I don't know anything other than America, right? And I said, where would I go? And how would I get there? And I did say, I wouldn't get on another white man's boat.
I wouldn't trust it. I wouldn't trust it.
Take me to go pick some sugar cane. But I was so set back.
Yeah.
So when you say that we have gone back to Africa.
Oh, no, it's...
Because to me...
Actually, it's happening. It's ongoing.
I'm sitting here thinking, where would I go? And like how, I mean, I guess I would get there on a plane. So I know how to get there on a plane.
Yes.
But where would I go? So I did this ancestry thing because, so I could know what region of Africa I was from. Well, I am a mixture of a whole bunch of different Africans. I'm 21% Nigerian. I've got B-E-I-N, Benin.
Yes.
Mali.
Okay.
So I've got a mixture, but mostly it's a Nigerian as the 21%.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't want to go to Africa as a missionary. I want to go to Africa because I can get there through a church.
As a tourist?
As a
tourist?
No, I want to go as someone going home. And
you can do that. A lot of people are.
But not knowing anyone from there,
okay.
Let me what I'm saying.
Let me help you with some of my thinking on that.
Homegoing, kind of like the Jewish people. They aliyah when they go to Israel.
You don't need to go to Africa.
I just come over here.
Africa's coming here for you.
Okay.
No.
And there are so many.
Africa's
coming here. And there are so many African communities here, organized. The tribal group of these people.
They call me white, though? They think I'm white?
No.
Well, it was just a word that means
it's Oyibo, foreigner, just to say you came from afar. So, and because you don't speak any local language, you appear the same way the white people were coming. They didn't know any local language. And the challenge that hardens that aspect is because there is no conversation. There is no engaging with each other. So now, my suggestion is this. You don't have to pay an air ticket all the way to Africa. There are many African communities organized here in America. They're Nigerian community, Congolese community, Malian community, Benin community, Liberian community. Even here in Des Moines, they're there.
Oh yeah.
You can say starting today, I want to identify as a Nigerian. And you approach the Nigerian, and I'm telling you the truth, the Nigerian community will embrace you. And your children will be raised as people from Nigerian descent. And when you live in that environment, I can tell you for true, if you live in that environment for a while, by the time your children are raised, they will feel they're adopting the Nigerian culture, the Nigerian ways, and so on and so forth. And for me, that's the suggestion which I would say, that instead of saying, I'm living here, and I'm not saying that should not be done. People who feel they're uncomfortable here, or they want much land there, or they can do some investment over there, you're well encouraged to go. But I believe there are so many Africans who are here that we can connect with each other. And you can say, I want to learn from your culture.
And I think
want
that
to
a
learn
lot of
from
the
your
people
ways.
that have returned back home, they have
I've had a little bit of that.
Yeah, they have had the exposure where they feel comfortable enough to say, you know what? I actually have lived in America all my life, but I've never been treated like an American.
Yes.
And so I am leaving, and I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to find my way. Are there challenges? Yes. I've watched stories upon stories of men and women who've returned back home, and they share their struggles, but they say, would I ever go back to America to resettle back? No.
And that's the benefit of it. So I think there is a possibility to be exposed, to be exposed, to be brought in, and to be helped. You'll realize, for example, how and I'm not saying that you'll agree with everything. Like we don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything that is done in my culture at my age. So there are certain things I frown at. When I look at it, I say, But the good side is that you learn certain things that can be valuable. For example, just an example, in terms of marriage. When culturally marriage is done in the African context, let's say in the Congolese context or the Bambe context where I come from, when marriage is done, it's not just between the two people. No. It is the union of the two families.
Oh, our families are.
You see, so
I don't like her.
So
you ain't gonna marry her, and then they gonna get married anyway.
So it's the union of the two families, and this is a bond. And the good side of that is that it makes you accountable to people. So you don't just break up because the two of you mad and the two of you separate. Okay, there is a good side of it and there is a negative side of it.
Yes, there is.
The negative side of it is this man takes advantage of you or this woman takes advantage of the man. And whatever is happening in the marriage, you become like trapped and you cannot get out of that marriage and things like that. So there are always bad things and good things, but there are a lot of positive things culturally that will help you to value where you come from, your origin, how things are done, the respect that is existing there. How do you treat your in-laws and so on and so forth? How are you being treated and so on? The care that you're being provided and so on and so forth. And all these things take away the stereotype.
They do.
Remember, they take away the stereotype and they start developing in you a certain appreciation of the other people. And I think for me,
your identity.
beside the dialogue, there should be that. And I can bet with you, it will not just be African Americans going to the Africans. It will be vice versa. So it will be when you come to me, I'll come to your home. When you come to me, I'll come to you. When I come to you, you feel okay. I need to go and see Philippe today, and so on and so forth. And that's how the dialogue starts. And the dialogue should happen informally. We don't need to create platforms. We don't need to create a talk show. We don't need, no. We need to meet, just
relationship.
Just develop a relationship.
Yeah.
One thing which I noticed when I'm walking in the streets of America or any place I find myself is that I found that with every person of color, or particularly the black people, when you meet, I'm on a train station, I'm walking on a street downtown, I see a black man, it's always our head that shakes.
Oh, you got the nod.
Man, I've always loved black people.
And sometimes
I see you.
You my man. I got you. I acknowledge
we
that
did something right. There we go.
You see, and those are those bonds that needs to build. It has to go just beyond the nodding of a head.
Yeah.
It has to be
a conversation. And then table fellowship.
How are you? And then a table fellowship, and then a visit, and then and that's how it grows. And then it takes away.
I'll say that, like, Pastor, like, both of you brought some really great points. Like the point about like making the conversations and having those talks. It really is the way we bridge this divide or this gap that we have in between the two groups. Because I have my best friends are married to African Americans, and being part of their lives, I've learned so much, like I've learned so much of their struggles, things that I will never face. Well, first as a female, and second as an African that came here with, a lot of cultural education background, because my parents were very intentional in the way they raised us. And so because I know these people, because I have those relationships, I would never speak of African Americans and their experiences and like downplay what those experiences have been, because I know that those issues have impacted people that are dear to my heart. Right? So when people become dear to your heart, when you've opened up those doors to have those conversations, to hear and to be heard, right? It changes things. And so what I'm hearing from you guys, and I'll just conclude by saying that, like, if you're African watching this video, if you're an African American watching this video, I'm begging you to open up your mind, to just be approachable next time you see an African American or you see an African. Go to them and just say, hi, how are you doing? What's your name? Are you from Des Moines? Are you, start that conversation, because it gets you into a door on somebody's life experiences that you will not otherwise have. And in as much as I've had the schooling background, or like have learned through research, documentaries and books and all of that, there's nothing better than knowing the people around you and connecting with those people. And to close it off, something you'd like to say to people or yourself, anyhow you want to close it off.
I want to say to Tulia, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for inviting me to this couch and opening your heart and being vulnerable. And I would like to say to those that identify as Black, African American, or Black American, I just suggest that maybe we open up our hearts too, and also just extend hospitality and extend ourselves to our African brothers and sisters that are coming from abroad. You might be at work with someone, or you might encounter them at an event, but somehow try to make an intentional connection because we can be a resource to them, and they can also teach us some things about us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That was the close up I needed. I really appreciate that. Oh, look at them hugging and everything. Hey. Amen. Thank you guys so much for coming. We hope to see you in our next episode that's coming up. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, which means, come on, you guys. Not being a hater. Oh, we don't like haters in here. Go ahead and subscribe. Share this video with the person that you feel like will be helpful to, which is everybody around you. Yes, you. We're on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Please like, and subscribe. Much love from Emutak.
So the Bible tells us, seek and you shall find.
Yes.
If you are seeking on your knees when you should be seeking at a doctor's appointment,
Yes.
you're going to lose your kid.